So welcome again to this webinar on the call for proposal relating to inclusion in vocational education and training. So the term vocational education and training, we might now very often just use the term VET, which stands, of course, for vocational education and training. This call is on innovative strategies and approaches to improve employment opportunities for disadvantaged and vulnerable groups through VET, through vocational education and training. So my name is Marta Makul. I'm the grant manager of the VET Toolbox. On my right side, I have my colleague Katrien Gielis. She is responsible for finance and administrative issues. And on my left side is my colleague Thibaut Monnier, who is in charge of communication.
Hello.
So before we run now through the webinar, we thought we would like to show you a short animation video that explains briefly what the VET Toolbox is about. And after that, we will go slide by slide through the webinar. So let's start now with the animation video, first of all. That is short and gives you a quick and nice overview.
Hello, my name is Marta and I work for the VET Toolbox. With my partners, we like to equip VET learners with relevant skills so that they can find their path to the labor market. Our problem is that many people cannot enroll, remain or transition successfully from vocational education and training. You got the solution, but lack support? No worries, we can support you. We look for innovative strategies and approaches to improve employment opportunities for disadvantaged and vulnerable groups through vocational education and training. It's easy, visit vettoolbox.eu, read the call for proposals documents and send your concept note. Send your concept note by post no later than the 15th of February 2019. The VET Toolbox, relevant skills for all.
Okay, sorry for this small IT issue. So thank you very much, Marta, for your introduction. So my name is Thibaut Monnier. I'm in charge of communication for the VET Toolbox. I'm just gonna introduce you in a few words on the software we use today for this session. So my colleague will present their presentation with you by sharing their screen. So you don't have anything to do. Their presentations will appear automatically on your screen. Please be aware that you have all joined this session in listen-only mode, which means your microphone is automatically muted. We do not share webcams neither to facilitate the flow. You can see in the top right corner of the page a small panel with an orange arrow. When you click on this arrow, you can make the window bigger and have access to the chat box. If you have any technical problem during this session, for instance, your connection is down or you don't hear or do not see the presentations anymore, please share your comment in the chat box that you can see in your control panel on the right side of your screen, and we'll try to find a solution for you, of course. If you registered for the wrong language, please note that we organize another webinar in French at 1 p.m. Brussels local time today, so you can still record to this session, and you can also watch the recording that we will share with you, and we will publish it on the website vettoolbox.eu after this session. Finally, if you have any question concerning the contents of the presentation, please type your question in the same question box that you can see in your control panel on the right of your screen, and we will collect it during the session, and my colleagues Marta and Katrien will answer to it at the end of this webinar. Questions that cannot be answered during this session can be submitted by email at grant@vettoolbox.eu. And the Q&A, the question and answers, all the questions will be published with their answers on our website before 4 of February. That's it for IT issues. I pass the floor to my colleague, Marta. Again, thank you very much for listening, and good luck to everybody.
Okay, so let's start with the technical part of this webinar and thus of the call for proposals. Just to give you an overview, right now, you see basically what the call for proposal is about. So first of all, we want innovative strategies and approaches in order to improve employment opportunities for a specific group, namely for disadvantaged and vulnerable groups, through vocational education and training. Let's take a quick look at the agenda. So what we will now in the next 45 minutes present, in the next half an hour present, is what is the call for proposals about? What are the main objectives, target group and eligibility criteria? What about the budget and the eligible cost? And what are the next steps? So today we are focusing more on the practical and administrative side on what the grant is about and how to apply for it. It's rather a snapshot, and we will not mention every single issue in detail, but we would like rather to draw your attention to some features that we consider important. In case you may notice a difference of what we are saying right now during the webinar and the text that you see in the guidelines, then please use the guidelines as the main source of verification. What is the general objective of this call for proposal? The general objective is to contribute to increased employability of disadvantaged and vulnerable groups. If we, and this is one of the most important slides, if we look into the 4 priorities that we like to finance, these are the following ones. So the first one is about access. We would like you to develop, test, or implement innovative strategies and approaches for vulnerable or disadvantaged groups. By the way, this sentence accounts for all 4 priorities. So we would like you on priority number 1, when it's about access, to ensure improved access and continuous enrollment for disadvantaged and vulnerable group to the VET system. Priority number 2 on completion is about improved teaching and training and learning, focusing and preventing these groups from dropping out of the VET system and ensuring their reintegration. Priority number 4 is about transition, so improved transition, ensure improved transition from formal or non-formal vocational education and training to work and increased integration to the labor market. And priority number 4 is about continuous learning at the workplace, what means ensure or guarantee work-based learning through on-the-job training, the recognition of prior learning, and demand-driven programs. About the 4 priorities, we would also like to ensure or notify you that applicants must develop projects that target at least 2 out of the 4 priorities. So it can be either access and completion, or it can be completion and transition, or continuous learning and access. So you need to develop at least 2 out of the 4 priorities in order to get awarded for the grant. So then the next one. This is an important note for you. So the target group, if we talk about disadvantaged groups, they are understood as a group that is in unfavorable circumstances, especially with regards to employment opportunities. A vulnerable group is defined as a group that is exposed to the risk of being unfavorable circumstances, especially in terms of employment opportunities. So for this call for proposal, especially women, migrants, internally displaced people, people living in rural areas, and people with disabilities are considered as the main categories of disadvantaged and vulnerable groups. But please note that this list is not considered being exhaustive. We also value if you define your target group, that the action targeting that the action you propose is targeting various categories relating to disadvantaged and vulnerable groups. For your project, you need to at least target 250 VET learners. And now these are 3 important notes to consider. So the action should take place in one of the 65 countries that are listed in Annex L. So Annex L is a part of the guidelines and the application package that you can find on our website. The duration for the action shall not be lower than 18 months, but it shall also not exceed 24 months. So the action, in other words, should take place and last between 1.5 years and up to 2 years. There's also only maximum 1 application with a single country scope that we will be awarded per country. So that's why we encourage you to cooperate with partners in the country where the action will take place. So about the eligibility criteria, let's run now through the eligibility criteria. First of all, I know there's quite some text on this slide, but this is really one of the most important things that you need to take into account, because you need to understand what is the role of the lead applicant and the co-applicants or the co-applicants. So first of all, the role of the lead applicant is the following. If you are awarded as the lead applicant, you need to support the application form because you are directly responsible for the preparation and the management of the action with your co-applicants and your affiliated entities. So that means that you represent and act on behalf of any other co-beneficiary, and you coordinate, design, and implement the action if you were to be the lead applicant. So you are directly the one who coordinates it, and you are also the main interlocutor with us and ABLE. You will become the beneficiary identified as the coordinator in the so-called Annex E3H1 under the special conditions. And please do not forget that you cannot apply alone. You need at least 1 co-applicant if you were to be the lead applicant. Let's take now a quick look at the role of the co-applicant. So as a co-applicant, you need to participate in the designing and implementing of the actions, and the costs you incur are eligible in the same way as those incurred by the lead applicant. You as a co-applicant must sign the mandate in Part B, Section 4 of the grant application form, and you will become the beneficiary in the action once you have signed that and agreed with the lead applicant. You as a co-applicant, you will also participate in the design and implementation of the action. And as said, the costs they incur are eligible in the same way as to the lead applicant. So let's take a closer look at the lead applicant right now. So as a lead applicant, you act with at least 1 co-applicant. To be a lead applicant, you must be a legal person and you must be a non-state and non-profit making actor. Who can apply? Just to give you concrete examples of who can be the lead applicant in this grant. Non-profit making institutions, non-profit NGOs, community-based organizations, private sector non-profit agencies, or networks at local, national, regional, or international level. But please note that international organizations set up under the international agreements, such as the United Nations, are not eligible to apply for this grant. The eligibility criteria that account for the lead applicant are the same for the co-applicant plus the who can apply as the lead plus you need to be a vet center, employment services, for-profit institutions and organizations. But please note that for-profit institutions and organizations, you have no right to raise profit with a grant. You can also be a public sector authority or, as said, national, regional, and local authorities. Just to give you an example of a constellation, you can be, if you want to be the lead applicant, for instance, you can be an NGO and the co-applicant can be a TVET center. Or if you were the lead applicant would be the National Employer Federation, the co-applicant can be a TVET center or public employment service, or also, for instance, national, regional, or local authority. So now let's take a look at where the lead applicant and the co-applicant shall be established. Well, either the lead applicant or the co-applicant would need to be established and registered in the country where the action takes place. The other one can be established in an, as we said, in an Asian country listed in Annex L or in an African country listed in Annex L. You can also be registered in an EU member state or also in Switzerland, Iceland, Norway, or Liechtenstein. Let's take now a closer look at affiliated entities. So we said you need to be a lead applicant and apply with at least one co-applicant, but we also enable so-called affiliated entities to take part and register with this grant. What are the affiliated entities? Well, these are the entities that are directly or indirectly controlled by the applicant, for instance, daughter companies or first-tier subsidiaries, granddaughter companies or second-tier subsidiaries, entities directly or indirectly controlling the applicants, or that are under the same direct or indirect control as the applicant, or if the applicant is also a member of the same network, the same federation or association as the affiliated entity. So that could be an affiliated entity, could be, for instance, a ministry, Ministry of Employment, Ministry of Education, for instance. Or it can be the umbrella organization, a network to which you as a lead or you as a co-applicant belong to. But what are the affiliated, which affiliated entity would not be eligible are the following ones. So if you are an affiliated entity that is not eligible are the ones that enter into a, for instance, procurement contract or subcontract with the applicant, if you receive financial support from the applicant, or if you cooperate on a regular basis with the applicant, for instance, on the basis of a memorandum of understanding or share assets, or if you have signed a consortium agreement under the grant contract, then you are not eligible to be listed as an affiliated entity. Now let's take a look at the three types of activities that we would finance under this call. So activity number 1 and activity number 2, piloting and knowledge development, are mandatory. Activity number 3 on raising awareness is optional. Activity number 1, as we said, on piloting means that you would cover it. We want you to cover a specific objective on the 4 priorities. So on access, completion, transition, or continuous learning for disadvantaged and vulnerable groups through the cooperation of public sector actors and private sector actors. For this type of activity, we can foresee, for instance, the recognition of prior learning, activities relating to bridging classes, additional tutorial classes and mentorship programs for vulnerable and disadvantaged groups, but also psychological and social counseling, adapting curricula and training materials based on the need of this group. For activity number 2 on knowledge development, we want you to use the pilot experience in order to develop one or more knowledge products. The knowledge products could be, for instance, guidelines, practical tools, manuals, but also instruments or descriptions of the pilot experience and the good practice. Everything that I listed now, please note, it's not exhaustive. So this list can be also completed by you. Activity number 3, that is optional, is about raising awareness on the rights of disadvantaged and vulnerable groups and empowering these groups. That means activities to be supported are communication and visibility campaigns, but also workshops to develop video clips. And again, this list is not exhaustive. Then take a look at the ineligible actions. Ineligible actions would be the ones now listed if you would only or mainly have these actions. Number 1 is if you only or mainly would offer individual scholarships or scholarships for studies or training courses, if it's only about improving facilities, infrastructure, or equipment, if it's only about purchasing vehicles, if it's about capacity development of the applicants, or if it's about training programs involving the purchase of higher education leading to the award of an advanced diploma or the graduate diploma or the degree or post-degree qualifications. So now I would like to give the floor to my colleague Katrin, who will run with you through the budget and the administrative and financial implications.
Thank you, Marta. Hello, everybody. As Marta said, I will continue with some information on the budget and on eligible costs. And after that, we will briefly discuss the next steps. So the total budget foreseen for this call is 4 million euro, but the budget per grant will be between 250 and 400,000 euro. We ask you to prepare a detailed budget in euro for the whole duration and for the first year. And please use the template in Annex B for it, which you can find on our website. From your budget, Enable will finance maximum 90% of this total budget, and so the balance must be financed from other sources. Please be aware that at the stage of the full proposal, the contribution of Enable may not vary from this initial estimate by more than 20%. So this means that even at the stage of the concept note, the budget needs to be quite accurate. Expenditure verification will be carried out by Enable, or better by an external body which is authorized by Enable. And you have to foresee a budget for this audit also to add in Annex B. On the eligible costs, a detailed list of eligible costs can be found in the General Conditions, Article 14, and the General Conditions are part of Annex G, which can also be found on our website. Please be aware that only actual costs incurred by the beneficiaries and the affiliated entities will be reimbursed as far as they are incurred during the action itself. You can add a contingency reserve of max 5% of the direct eligible costs, and you can also add a flat rate to cover the indirect costs at the maximum of 7% of the direct eligible cost. Taxes, however, are not eligible unless you can show us that you cannot reclaim them. Then they become eligible costs. The following costs are ineligible: debts and interest paid on debts, provisions for losses or potential future liabilities, also costs declared and financed already by another action or work program that receives a European Union grant, We will not finance purchases of land or buildings. We will not finance currency exchange losses, and you are not allowed to give credit to third parties. Sending the concept notes. All the information can be found on our website, so we ask you to read carefully the documents before to send us your concept note. So please consult our website vettoolbox.eu, read carefully the guidelines, watch our animation videos, and if you still have a question, we ask you to check the listed questions and answers on our website that will be updated regularly. You still did not find the answer? Then you can send us your question to grant@vettoolbox.eu by January 25th, 2019 at the latest. Very practical now. After you have studied all the information, you can now fill in the grant application form plus the required annexes. Please don't send us any other documents than this application form and its annexes. You can fill it in English or in French. We need 1 original and 2 copies of the paper version in A4 format. And we also need an electronic version on a USB stick with exactly the same content. We ask you to send everything in a sealed envelope, and you should mention the reference VetToolbox 2018-001, plus the title of this grant, plus the warning that it should not be opened before the opening session. You can send us your proposal by registered mail, by private courier, or by hand delivery here in Brussels. Please be aware that concept notes that are sent by email will be rejected. The following table indicates the next steps. So today we have our webinar, and after that you can still send questions to our mailbox grant@vettoolbox.eu until the 25th of January 2019. As I said, we will update the list with questions and answers regularly, but the last date on which we give clarifications is the 4th of February 2019. Then, of course, the most important date is the deadline for submission of the concept notes, which is the 15th of February 2019 at 12 o'clock Brussels time. After that, we will now analyze the concept notes, and we expect to give you an answer by the end of March. We will inform you in written on the outcome of your concept note. And for the lucky ones, they will be invited to submit a full application by the 10th of May 2019. After that, we will analyze the full applications in the months of May and June. And in June, we will inform you on the outcome, and we hope to sign the contracts and make the first payments in July and August 2019. So very important, on paper plus the USB stick, no later than 15th of February 2019 at 12 o'clock Brussels time. We will now take a few minutes time to look at your questions, and we will come back to you in a minute. So see you in a few minutes.
All right, hello, we are back. We have collected some of your questions. We have collected all your questions, of course, in the past 2-3 minutes. And what we will do now is we run through the questions that we can answer right away. But please bear with us that some of the questions we will not be able to answer right now due to time constraints or because the answer requires a longer way of explaining it. But what we will do is all the questions that we received from you today will be published on our website with the right answer by this Friday. So I start now taking some questions. I know you cannot see the questions. That's why I will read them out. So the first question is about, in regard to working with marginalized groups, especially with women, can the fund also allow training to facilitate self-esteem before embarking on proposed projects? So the question is about whether whether this grant can also allow trainings for vulnerable and disadvantaged groups, especially for women, to facilitate self-esteem. If self-esteem is a component then of your pilot action, then this is possible. It cannot be the only one, but it can be a part of it. So yes, this is possible. The next question is about, and please note that you will receive the detailed answers again in written, which will be published on our website. The next question is that you are saying you are a not-for-profit NGO who is registered in Australia. This Australian NGO would like to be the lead applicant. And there the question is, are you eligible to be the lead applicant? Well, unfortunately, if you are registered in Australia, you are not eligible to be the lead applicant. Please take a look on page 7 to 8 onwards, where in the guidelines, because in the guidelines starting from page 7, it says that you must be either registered in the EU or in the countries that are set in Annex L. So this is unfortunately not possible. Another question is on, can the co-applicant be an individual? No, the co-applicant cannot be an individual person. And please take also a look on page 9. You have to be registered as an entity. It cannot be an individual person to perform as a co-applicant. Can the co-applicant be a for-profit institution? Yes, the co-applicant can be a for-profit organization. But please remember that the grant cannot be used to raise profits. This is also stipulated from page 9 onwards in the guidelines. So yes, you can be a for-profit organization, but you cannot use the grant to use it for raising profits. Then we also have a question. Okay, then we also have a question from the UK that says, could you please share where you stand on the UK organization submitting as a lead or co-applicant, considering the Brexit and the case of the no deal? This is indeed, we have a clause on that. In the guidelines, you can see it on page 8, where we have a special clause for you British applicants that, and I read that, please be aware that the eligibility criteria must be compiled for the entire duration of the grant, unless sector-specific eligibility rules provide otherwise. If the UK withdraws from the EU during the grant period without concluding an agreement with the EU, ensuring in particular that British applicants continue to be eligible, you will cease to receive EU funding, or will be required to leave the project on the basis of article, and then the article will still be inserted. So please take a look on page 8. Then we also have one on LGTB rights. Are also organizations eligible that defend or are responsible for LGBT rights? And the answer is, if yes, in your country they face vulnerability and that are disadvantaged, then also this group is eligible as a target group. So yes. Then we also have a question on, can the same organization apply for 3 different proposals? There we would like to share with you on the page, just a moment, so yes, this is possible. Yes, this is possible. This is explained. This is explained in the grant on page 13. So the number of applications and grants per applicants. So the lead applicant can submit up to 3 applications under this call for proposal. But the lead applicant may only be awarded for maximum 2 grants under this call. You as a lead applicant may not be a co-applicant or affiliated entity in another application at the same time. And a co-applicant or an affiliated entity may not be the co-applicant or the affiliated entity in more than 1 application under this call. So if you would like to read that up further, then please take a look at the guidelines on page 13. Okay, and then we have questions regarding, there's also a question on, can the lead applicant be a vet center? And can they be registered in the UK? So the lead applicant needs to be a non-for-profit, but also a non-public entity. So if the vet center is a public vocational education and training center, then you cannot apply as the lead applicant. You can only apply as the co-applicant. And for that, we would also like to ask you to take a look at the guidelines starting from page 8 onwards, where the criteria, especially the eligibility criteria, are stipulated for co-applicants. Yes, there's another question that says, in the beginning of the webinar, we have mentioned that you can only accept 1 single country application. Let us go to that slides. No, but yes. So the one single country application, what does it mean? Well, we can only accept and only 1 grant per 1 award per 1 single country scope will be awarded. So that means that only 1 grant per country will be awarded. That means that if you have country A cannot be awarded 5 or 6 different grants coming from different co and lead applicants that submitted their concept note. We will only award 1 grant per 1 single country scope. If you have, however, and that is maybe very important to mention here, it's also mentioned in the grant, of course, that if your project reaches more, has an outreach across a border, so across a country, you would like to target 2 different countries that are eligible, then you do not fall under this criteria. So if you have country A and country B that are concerned, then this criteria is not applicable to you. But we encourage within 1 country to seek for cooperation, because in this way you raise your chances of getting awarded the grant, to see, okay, which other NGOs, which other public institutions are planning to apply for this grant. Because if you coordinate within 1 country, then of course you increase your chances that from that country only 1, 2 or 3 applications will be submitted to us, and then your chances are of course higher to be granted, to be awarded for this specific country. Okay, now we have some questions regarding financial and administrative implications, and there I would like to give the floor to my colleague Catherine.
Thank you, Marta. The first question is on the word limit for the concept note. What is the word limit for the concept note, and what should be the format of the concept note? Actually, you have to fill in the Annex A to the guidelines, which is the grant application form. It is a Word format. And in that Word document, you will also see for every question or information we need, it is indicated how many pages you can use maximum to describe your concept. A second question is on, may match funding from VFP, cash for training, be proposed by applicants? I have to admit that I'm not very sure what is meant by this question. So I propose the person who asked this question to send us an email with a bit more information on it, so we can put the question and the answers in the list by Friday, the end of this week. Third question is on the cost of sending in the applications by hard copy could be high. Do you plan to reimburse the applicant for the same at actuals? Actually, it is not allowed for us to reimburse because it would not be an eligible cost, because only costs incurred during the action, meaning after the contract was signed, can be reimbursed. So unfortunately, we cannot reimburse you. And it's true that they might be high. So yeah, maybe you should look for an efficient way of sending the proposal to us using intermediary or something. And then a question, if we are sending by registered mail, would you consider any application which has not reached you before the deadline due to problems of the courier service provider? I think the answer should be yes. And something on this problem is mentioned in the Prague, in the guidelines of the European Union. I will look it up for you and also mention it in the list of the questions and answers. I don't know, Thibaut, if in the meantime we have received some other questions or...
Yep, but I think it's almost time.
Yes, the title of the action is, the title of the action is what you can find on the first page of the guidelines. So it is called, in short, Call for Proposals on Inclusion in Vocational Education and Training. Yes, for exchange rate fluctuations, so they are not eligible, meaning that by one way or another you will have to cover them and seek, how you can cover the fluctuations, because it's not eligible and it's an EU rule. So we can, since we are using the EU procedures, we cannot choose to make it eligible ourselves. The list of eligible costs in Annex G, you have the general conditions. It is one of the parts of Annex G, I agree. And in the part general conditions under Article 4, you have the list of the eligible costs.
All right. Taking a quick look at the time, we see that time is over, but what we will do again, that's we said also in the beginning, we will ensure we are now still collecting all your questions. We will answer to every question, also to the questions that we answered now orally to. We will do so in a written way, and we will publish all the questions and answers on our website at vettoolbox.eu under the grant. It will be a Q&A document where you can also read the other questions and answers submitted by other organizations. So you will not see only your own. Thank you very much for your attention. We wish you best of luck with preparing and submitting the concept note to us. We very much look forward to receiving lots of concept notes. All the best, the Vet Toolbox team. Bye-bye.